Control of Congress is still undecided as votes are counted in multiple states. Republicans were hoping for a red wave, which didn't really pan out, like a red sprinkle. CBS News political director Fin Gomez is following the major races for us from Washington. We keep talking about Fin, we keep talking about it wasn't a red wave, but it's still, there are some important wins for Republicans as well. But why do we think this red wave didn't really pan out?
Yeah, it wasn't a red wave. It was more like a red trickle. And you're right. Democrats overperformed, essentially. Democratic voters were motivated to the polls in part because of abortion rights. We saw women and young voters and people of color come out in certain areas to really fuel this drive by Democrats to be competitive in some of these states and do better than expected. I don't know if you recall, but there was a great model by our great polling unit, led by Anthony Salvanto, right before the election that said that there was a scenario where young voters and women of color, voters of color and women, if they came out, they could show this perhaps this competitive shift, and because of that, you're seeing perhaps some of that impact throughout some of these crucial races and battleground areas. Also, the other aspect I wanted to say is that wanted to point out was the Trump factor was real among independents, and especially helped drive Democratic base voters to the polls when there was news of the former president perhaps jumping in to the 2024 arena. That brought some attention back to Trump, and there was a real frustration within parts of the Republican Party over Trump inserting himself into this cycle as much as he did. It became somewhat of a referendum on him. Some Trump insiders that I spoke to and Republican Party insiders that I spoke to have told me, and because of that focus, it did help drive some of these independent voters and again some of these Democratic base voters as well.
Yeah, and speaking of which, a lot of Trump-line candidates did not fare well. Given all of that, what does this mean for his brand within the party? Could more Republican lawmakers try to distance themselves from him, especially as he hints pretty strongly that he's running for president in 2024?
You're absolutely right, Nancy. Next week, we are expecting an announcement. He has said he's going to be making a very big announcement and at his Mar-a-Lago estate, and that, there's a lot of speculation as to if that it will be his official announcement into the ring. Nancy, a senior source close to former President Donald Trump told me that Trump has privately been infuriated, very angry over the results of the midterm elections, despite his posts on social media saying that it was a touting them as a win and a quote great evening. According to the source, the former president has been blaming everyone except himself over the results, including his aides and Fox News host Sean Hannity and others. The person said that the Tuesday night's better than expected results for Democrats were mainly due to the elections becoming this referendum on Trump, as I mentioned, and over his candidate picks. The candidate quality issue was significant, and also, according to the source, the fact that he focused so much on the relitigation of the 2020 election, and you compare that to Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, who came up with a very big win, nearly 20-point win over his Democratic challenger. So because of that, there is internally within the Republican Party some erosion of support. At least that's what we're hearing. Trump still remains a very dominant figure in the Republican Party, but for the first time, perhaps since 2015, he might be at his most politically vulnerable than he has been throughout since that period. So there's been a lot of attention on that, both externally and internally, about his position in the Republican Party, and it has allowed these discussions, and criticism has allowed for his potential rivals to sort of accumulate. And as we say in Washington, when they smell blood in the water, sharks start to swim. So we're keeping an eye on that. And again, still a very dominant figure in the Republican Party, but you are seeing that criticism pick up.
So let's talk about the Senate. There are three races that are still, we don't know the outcome of. Georgia, we're not going to find out till next month anyways. But what about the two other ones? Where do things stand?
Well, yeah, I mean, in Nevada, and you mentioned Georgia, which is the December 6th runoff. In Nevada, it's between the Republican Adam Laxalt and the incumbent Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. There's still about 165,000 votes as of this morning still being counted. It's a very close race with, what we're seeing is that the Republican take a small lead ahead of the Democrat there. In Arizona, there are still about 600,000 votes still to be counted, but so far we have that as lean Dem with Senator Mark Kelly, the incumbent there, ahead of Blake Masters, the Republican challenger. And on the gubernatorial front, we have, of course, Kari Lake, the Republican, in a tight counting matchup there with Katie Hobbs, who has taken the lead. And again, CBS News has this as lean Democratic. There's still a lot of votes to be counted. Republicans I spoke to say they're a little bullish about the outcome, but we'll see. But those are still three very important, crucial outcomes that will determine the balance of the Senate.
You're talking about the former president. I mean, Kari Lake, election denier, closely aligned with former President Donald Trump. Based on what we've seen already in the midterms, I don't know if that's going to work in her favor.
Yeah, and she is beloved by the Trump base. She's someone that even some people close to Trump had said that she's a potential shortlister if the former president once again becomes the Republican nominee. So that's how much she is loved by that Trump base.
Finn, I want to turn now to Congressman Kevin McCarthy, because he has already announced his bid for House Speaker if Republicans end up taking control of the chamber. Does he have the support there, and how does he bridge the gap between such a divergent, wide-ranging conservative voice right now?
As of now, that's a great question, Nancy, but as of now, our current House estimate has Republicans at about 210 seats. You need 218 for the majority. There's 200 for Democrats. If the Republicans end up winning and having control of the House, as we have it as lean Republican, he will have some difficulty. He does have the support right now, but he will have some difficulty because it's such a small majority. Right. And so it's also a situation where certain far-right Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the MAGA Republican, could have an outsized sway in the new House Republican structure, which could be problematic for McCarthy if he does become Speaker.
It is really interesting to see how all this unfolds. Finn Gomez, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Anne-Marie.